So let me start with the nature of the challenges we face. First, the Eurozone. Now, the future shape of Europe is being forged. There are some serious questions that will define the future of the European Union and the future of every country within it. People are increasingly frustrated that decisions taken further and further away from them mean their living standards are slashed through enforced austerity, or their taxes are used to bail out governments on the other side of the continent. On the other side of the continent. On the other side of the continent. Now, I accept, of course, that for the single market to function, we need a common set of rules and a way of enforcing them. But we also need to be able to respond quickly to the latest developments and trends. Competitiveness demands flexibility, choice and openness, or Europe will fetch up in a no man's land between the rising economies of Asia and the market-driven North America. The EU must be able to act with the speed and flexibility of a network, not the cumbersome rigidity of a bloc. We believe in a flexible union of free member states who share treaties and institutions and pursue together the ideal of cooperation to represent and promote the values of European civilization in the world, to advance our shared interests by using our collective power to open markets, and to build a strong economic base across the whole of Europe. And we believe in our nations working together to protect the security and diversity of our energy supplies. Nations working together to protect the security and diversity of our energy supplies. So let us use this moment, as the Dutch Prime Minister has recently suggested, to examine thoroughly what the EU as a whole should do and what it should stop doing. Now, in Britain, we've already launched our Balance of Competences review to give us an informed and objective analysis of where the EU helps and where it hampers. In the same way, we need to examine whether the balance is right in so many areas where the European Union has legislated, including on the environment, social affairs and crime. Nothing should be off the table. Nothing should be off the table. My fourth principle is democratic accountability. We need to have a bigger and more significant role for national parliaments. There is not, in my view, a European demos. It is national parliaments which are and will remain the true source of real democratic legitimacy and accountability in the European Union. It is to the Bundestag that Angela Merkel has to answer. It's through the Greek parliament that Antonis Samaras has to pass his government's austerity measures. And it's to the British Parliament that I must account, and it's to the British Parliament that I must account, and it's to the British Parliament that I must account on the EU budget negotiations, on the safeguarding our place in the single market. My fifth principle is fairness. Whatever new arrangements are enacted for the Eurozone, they must work fairly for those countries inside it or outside it. That will be of particular importance to Britain. Now, as I've said, we are not going to join the single currency. But there is no overwhelming economic reason why the single currency and the single market should share the same boundary, any more than the single market and Schengen. Any more than the single market and Schengen. Today, public disillusionment with the EU is at an all-time high. Now, of course, some of this antipathy about Europe in general really relates, of course, to the European Court of Human Rights rather than the EU. And Britain is leading European efforts to deal with this. And there is indeed much, much more that needs to be done on this front. But people also feel that the EU is now heading for a level of political integration that is far outside Britain's comfort zone. They see treaty after treaty changing the balance between member states and the EU, and they note they were never given a say. They've had referendums promised, but not delivered. They see what's happened to the euro, and they note that many of our political and business leaders urged Britain to join at the time. Urged Britain to join at the time, and they haven't noticed many expressions of contrition. And they look at the steps that the Eurozone is taking, and they wonder what deeper integration for the Eurozone will mean for a country which is not going to join the euro. The result is that democratic consent for the EU in Britain is now wafer thin. Some people say that pointing this out is irresponsible. Some people say, yes, we must. Yes, we must. Some people say that pointing this out is irresponsible. A choice between leaving or being part of a new settlement in which Britain is at the forefront of collective action on issues like foreign policy and trade, and where we leave the door firmly open to new members. A new settlement subject to the democratic legitimacy and accountability of national parliaments, where member states combine in flexible cooperation, respecting national differences and not always trying to eliminate them. And not always trying to eliminate them. And not always trying to eliminate them. And in which we have proved that some powers can, in fact, be returned to member states. And also look, too, at what we have achieved already. We've ended the obligation for Britain to bail out Eurozone members. We've kept Britain out of the fiscal compact. We've launched a process to return some existing justice and home affairs powers. We've launched a process to return some existing justice and home affairs powers. We've secured protections on banking union and reformed the common fisheries policy. The common fisheries policy. The common fisheries policy. So we're starting to shape the reforms that we need now. But if there is no appetite for a new treaty for us, and if there is no appetite for a new treaty for us, or for us all, then of course Britain would be ready to address the changes we need in a negotiation with our European partners. So the next Conservative manifesto, So the next Conservative manifesto in 2015 will ask for a mandate from the British people for a Conservative government to negotiate a new settlement with our European partners in the next Parliament. Now, I understand the appeal of going it alone, of charting our own course, but it will be a decision we will have to take with cool heads. Proponents on both sides of the argument will need to avoid exaggerating their claims. Of course, Britain could make her own way in the world, outside the EU if we chose to do so. So could any other member state. So could any other member state. Yes, a member they inadequate. Yes, a member they inadequate. So could any other member state. But the question we'll have to ask ourselves is this: is that the very best future for our country? We have more power and influence, whether implementing sanctions against Iran or Syria, Iran or Syria, or promoting democracy in Burma, if we can act together. The fact is, if you join an organisation like the European Union, there are rules. You'll not always get what you want, but that doesn't mean that we should leave. Not if the benefits of staying and working together are greater. You'll not always get what you want. You'll not always get what you want. We would also have to think carefully, too, about the impact on our influence at the top table of international affairs. There's no doubt that we're more powerful in Washington, in Beijing, in Delhi, because we're a powerful player inside the European Union. That matters for British jobs, for British influence, for British security. It matters to our ability to get things done in the world. It matters to the United States and other friends around the world. It matters to the United States and other friends around the world. It matters to the United States and other friends around the world, which is why many tell us very clearly, very clearly, that they want Britain to remain in the European Union. And when that referendum comes, let me say now that if we can negotiate such an arrangement, I will campaign for it with all my heart and all my soul. because I believe something very deeply. Because I believe something very deeply, that Britain's national interest is best served in a flexible, adaptable, and open European Union, and that such a European Union is best with Britain in it.